Miss Bellamy's classroom at Elmwood Elementary was always a hub of curiosity and laughter. She had always been the favorite teacher at the school. Her students adored her, and parents spoke of her as the kind of educator who left lasting impressions on young minds. Each morning, her students arrived eager to dive into lessons, confident they would leave the day a little smarter and a lot happier. Miss Bellamy had a knack for making even the driest topics come alive, her explanations laced with humor and her lessons often punctuated by the playful banter of her 15 bright-eyed third graders. From math puzzles to science experiments, every day in Miss Bellamy's classroom was an adventure. But on one peculiar Monday morning, Miss Bellamy arrived at school feeling different. Almost late for class, she had rushed out the door without her usual hearty breakfast of toast, eggs, and an extra hot cup of coffee. By the time the first bell rang, a faint gnawing sensation in her stomach had begun to distract her. She ignored it and launched into a lesson right away, her voice steady and lively as usual, determined to push through until lunchtime. The day began as usual, with a lively review of multiplication tables. "What's 6 times 7? She asked, writing on the chalkboard with her usual flourish. Timmy, the quick-witted boy in the front row, raised his hand enthusiastically. 42, he shouted, his grin wide. Correct. And what about 8 times 8? Miss Bellamy's voice faltered slightly as her stomach let out a low, ominous growl. Several students giggled. "Miss Bellamy, your tummy's talking," Timmy said, his eyes wide with amusement. "Just a little hungry, Timmy," she replied, forcing a smile. But the truth was more complicated. The hunger wasn't normal. It clawed at her insides, growing sharper and deeper with each passing moment. Her body trembled slightly as she continued teaching, pretending nothing was wrong. As the morning wore on, Miss Bellamy's condition worsened. Her stomach growled incessantly, the sound deep and resonant, like an animal trapped within. By the time she transitioned to a science lesson on the water cycle, she was struggling to keep her composure. "Evaporation occurs when she stammered, clutching the edge of her desk for support. The classroom swam before her eyes. She glanced at the rows of desks, at the children sitting attentively, their eager faces turned toward her. A strange thought flickered in her mind, a thought so absurd and unsettling she shook her head to banish it. But it wouldn't go away. The hunger wasn't just calling for food. It was calling for them. "Miss Bellamy, are you okay?" asked Sarah, her voice tinged with concern. "I'm fine, Sarah," she said, though her voice was unconvincing. "Just a bit peckish." The hunger twisted inside her, relentless and overpowering. Her stomach let out another roar, this one louder than before. The children exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what was happening. Finally, Miss Bellamy could take it no longer. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Class," she announced, her voice trembling, "today's lesson is about digestion." The students looked at one another, puzzled. Before anyone could speak, Miss Bellamy lunged toward Timmy, her hunger overtaking her completely. In one swift, surreal motion, she scooped him up and swallowed him whole. The classroom fell into stunned silence. Miss Bellamy froze, horrified by what she had done. But almost immediately, a wave of relief washed over her. The hunger ebbed, replaced by a strange sense of satisfaction. Her stomach growled again, softer this time, as if thanking her. But the relief was short-lived. The hunger returned, sharper than before. Her gaze fell on Sarah, who was staring at her with wide, unblinking eyes. "I'm sorry," Miss Bellamy whispered, and with that, she swallowed Sarah too. As Miss Bellamy consumed each of her students, a cascade of intense sensations overwhelmed her. The experience was both physical and emotional, a visceral reaction that mingled hunger, guilt, and strange satisfaction. Each gulp brought a wave of fleeting relief. Her gnawing hunger ebbed with each child she swallowed, but only momentarily. It was as if her stomach had become a bottomless void, demanding more despite its expanding size. She could feel the students sliding down her throat, a surreal sensation of warmth and movement as they settled into her stomach. The first few students sparked pangs of horror and shame. "What am I doing?" she thought, even as the primal hunger drove her to continue. But as she progressed, a strange calmness began to take over. Her movements became more deliberate, almost mechanical, and she started to focus on the temporary peace that each act brought to her body. Her stomach stretched and expanded to accommodate the growing number of children inside. With each new addition, it felt taut and heavy, yet not painful, just full, as though she were carrying something precious. The weight shifted subtly as the students moved inside, creating a strange, almost comforting pressure. Between bites, her emotions fluctuated wildly. Waves of regret would crash over her, only to be drowned out by the primal satisfaction of quelling her relentless hunger. She felt an odd sense of closeness to her students now, as if they had become a part of her in the most literal sense. The other children screamed, scrambling to escape. Desks overturned, papers scattered, and the classroom descended into chaos. But there was nowhere to run. Miss Bellamy moved through the room methodically, consuming her students one by one. "Miss Bellamy, no!" cried Ella, the smallest of the group, as she was lifted off the ground. "I can't stop," Miss Bellamy said, tears streaming down her face. Her hunger had become a force beyond her control. Strangely, as her stomach swelled to impossible proportions, some of the children began to accept their fate. "If it helps you, Miss Bellamy, it's okay," said Abigail, stepping forward bravely. "Thank you," Miss Bellamy murmured, her voice heavy with gratitude as she devoured her. Inside Miss Bellamy's stomach, the students experienced a bizarre and surreal environment. It was warm and soft, the walls gently pulsing around them. To their surprise, they found they could breathe and speak, though the air was humid and carried a faint, acidic tang. At first, panic set in. The children cried out, pounding on the walls around them, their voices overlapping in a chaotic chorus. But as more of their classmates arrived, a strange camaraderie began to form. "It's okay, everyone," Sarah said, trying to steady her voice. "We're all here together. We'll figure this out." Timmy, ever the joker, tried to lighten the mood. "Well, at least we don't have to take the math test now," he quipped, earning a few nervous laughs. As they adjusted to their new surroundings, the students found themselves in a bizarre state of limbo. The walls of Miss Bellamy's stomach were elastic and slightly translucent, allowing them to see faint, distorted glimpses of the outside world. They could hear her muffled voice and the rhythmic sound of her heartbeat, which was oddly soothing. The environment was strangely playful. The stomach's movements created a gentle bouncing sensation, almost like a trampoline. Timmy and a few others started to jump and slide around, their laughter cutting through the tension. Despite the oddity of their situation, a sense of unity emerged. The children took comfort in each other's presence, finding ways to stay optimistic even as they speculated about what would happen next. For Miss Bellamy, the experience was one of conflict and surrender. Her humanity battling against an insatiable hunger she couldn't understand or control. For the students, it was a strange, almost dreamlike adventure. They were scared but found solace in their shared experience, adapting to their surreal environment with the resilience and imagination only children possess. Their mutual connection, teacher and students, remained, even in the most unimaginable of circumstances, binding them together in a moment that was both horrifying and oddly intimate. By the time she reached the final student, little Peter, the classroom was silent save for the groaning of Miss Bellamy's chair beneath her massive form. Her stomach had grown so large it pressed against her desk, its surface taut and round. Peter stood by the door, trembling but calm. "Am I the last one?" he asked softly. "Yes," Miss Bellamy said, her voice hoarse. Peter hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I guess that makes me dessert." Miss Bellamy chuckled weakly. "You're very special, Peter." He stepped forward, and with one final gulp, Miss Bellamy swallowed him. The hunger was finally gone, replaced by a profound, almost euphoric fullness. She collapsed into her chair, her stomach enormous and bulging, pressing against the desk and spilling over her lap. Inside her belly, the children floated in a strange, warm chamber. "This is kind of fun," Sarah said, her voice muffled. "Yeah," Timmy agreed. "It's like a bouncy house." They laughed and played, their spirits strangely unbroken by the bizarre situation. Meanwhile, Miss Bellamy leaned back in her chair, a loud, thunderous burp escaping her lips. She sighed deeply, her eyelids growing heavy. Within moments, she was snoring softly, her students giggling inside her belly. And so, the legend of Miss Bellamy was born. A tale of a teacher whose appetite for knowledge was matched only by her appetite for everything else.